Okay, so within the obligation theories, the first one is teleology. Teleology. Okay, in teleology, it refers to moral philosophies in which an act is considered morally right or acceptable if it produces some desired result, such as pleasure, knowledge, career growth, and the realization of self-interest, utility, wealth, and even fame. So basically, we don't care so much regarding what is the end result, as long as our action achieves our end result, then that action is considered as ethically right. If an action does not serve any purpose, or an action does not um, produce any desired result, then that action is considered unethical. Consequentialism is a subset of teleology, where it assesses the moral worth of behavior by looking at its consequences. Okay, so it looks at what happens when such and such things is done. So if the consequences is good, then we can consider that the action itself is ethically moral. um, in under teleology, egoism is part of it as well. Okay, we've mentioned about egoism, which is the ends is based on self-interest. Okay, it defines right or acceptable behavior in terms of its consequence for the individual. If the consequence is up to the consequence is as required or as wanted by the individual, then the act that produces the consequences is considered ethical. So egoism sounds very individualistic and very egocentric, but a slightly less egocentric will be enlightened egoism. So it is a long-range perspective and allows for the well-being of others, although their own self-interest remains paramount. Okay, so in enlightened egoism, the individual will consider other people's interests as well. Unlike the pure egoism, they will consider other people's interests as well, because if other people's interest is not satisfied, then they themselves will be affected by it. Okay, so a very simple example, a person throws is considering whether to throw trash outside his house without putting them in proper trash can. Okay, so and then he's considering, if I throw this trash outside just like that, then people will be disturbed. Okay, so people's disturbance to people is not self-interest, is considering other people. However, he then thinks that if people are disturbed, then they will kick me out of the community, then they will not be friends with me. So in the end, he is still considering about himself. If other people if is affected, then I will be disturbed, I will not be accepted by people, people will scold me. So in the end, he's still thinking about himself, but as the end point, but then he is still considering other people, other people's interests, but his other people's interests on the and their effect on his own interests. Okay, so that's the enlightened egoism, as opposed to the pure egoism, which totally is about himself. And then under teleology is utilitarianism. It seeks the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Okay, so in general, the teleology is about an act is considered ethical when it serves a certain purpose. Okay, whatever that purpose it doesn't matter. But under utilitarianism, which is part of teleology, the end result should be something that is the greatest good, the greatest result, that affects the greatest number of people. So if this is giving benefit, and the highest level of benefit for the most number of people, then the act that produces that benefit is considered as ethical. Okay. So this utilitarian sounds like something that is the most well, sounds like something that the most favorable for most number of people. And then you have underneath utilitarian, you have rule utilitarians, okay, which argue that general rules should be followed to decide which action is best, whereas act utilitarians, yeah, they say that the rightness of each individual action must be evaluated to determine whether it produces the greatest utility for the greatest number of people. Okay, next is deontology. Okay, so deontology refers to moral philosophies that focus on the rights of individuals and the intentions associated with a particular behavior rather than its consequences. So it's focusing more on the act. It's focusing more on the act rather than on the end, the consequence. Under deontology, there is the non-consequentialism, uh, where they regard for certain behavior as inherently right, and determination of this rightness focuses on individual actor, not on society. So in deontology, the focus is on the act itself and not the end. So it regards that certain behavior, certain act may be inherently right. Doesn't matter what is the outcome, the act itself may be inherently right. And how to determine whether an act is inherently right will depend on the individual actor. It will depend on the individual himself and not on society. So his own whether something is right is on the individual himself, and not on whether society considers that act is being right or not. Okay. And categorical imperative: if you feel comfortable allowing everyone in the world to see you commit an act, and if your rationale is for acting in a particular manner is suitable to become a universal principle guiding behavior, then committing that act is ethical. So within this non-consequentialism, people may use categorical imperative, a simple rule, a simple rule to determine whether an act is considered ethical or not. So if you feel comfortable, that if you feel comfortable that people see you do a certain act, then generally that act is ethical. But if you do something and you are afraid people seeing what you're doing, then that act is considered as unethical. It's as simple as just how you feel when people see you do the things. Under deontology, you have rule deontologists and act deontologists. So in rule deontologists, conformity to general moral principles based on logic determines ethicalness. So if they conform to general moral principles, in act deontologists, they hold that actions are the proper basis to judge morality and or ethicalness. So whether an act is considered moral is the actions itself. Okay. And the other, in rule deontologists, whether that act conforms to general moral principles. Okay. Another group of moral philosophies is the relativist perspective. So in relativist perspective, definitions of ethical behavior are derived subjectively from the experience of individuals and groups. or in so basically to determine whether an act is relative or not, is ethical or not, is relative. Could be based on experiences. So their experience is one thing, one is good, is better than the other. Therefore, the first one is more ethical than the other. So it's based on experience of individual or groups. So first one is descriptive relativism, where it relates to observation of other cultures. And then the next one is meta-ethical relativism. It proposes that people naturally see situations from their own perspectives, and there is no objective way of resolving ethical disputes between different value systems and individuals. So basically, meta-ethical relativism is saying that there is simply no objective way of saying whether an act is ethical or not. Okay. Normative relativism, there is the assumption that one person's opinion is as good as another. So your opinion, if you think your opinion is good, then my opinion is also good. Okay. Um, and so relative perspective basically acknowledges that people have many different views. Okay, and there is generally no correct, objectively correct opinion. Um, it observes the actions of members of an involved group, and it attempts to determine groups' consensus on a given behavior. So basically, where is to determine whether an act is good or not is just simply based on consensus. If most people consider that that act is ethical, then it will be considered as ethical. And basic relativism acknowledges that people have many different views. The relativists observe the action of members of an involved group, and it attempts to determine groups' consensus on a given behavior. And the problem with relativism is it emphasizes people's differences while ignoring their basic similarities. It tries to relativism is focusing on saying that um, there are differences or views among the people. Therefore, it's difficult to say whether an act is ethical or not. But they forgot that there are similarities. So maybe similarities are the ones that can be considered as being ethical, whereas the differences, those things are less ethical.